A new complex cyber threat has been found on computers in the Middle East and Africa. The malware is called Flame, and security experts say its main purpose is to steal information from infected computers. It can take screenshots, track keystrokes, even infect Bluetooth-connected devices, and it's gone undetected for the past 2 years. For more on that story, we turn again to our editor-at-large, Cory Johnson. Cory?
Yeah, Emily, this new threat's even more complex than the Stuxnet virus that was of such great interest a few years ago. It's designed to gather huge amounts of information, whether it means using that, gathering it, sifting through it. We don't really know, but now to talk about this new cyber weapon and who might be behind it, Brian White, Managing Director and Chief Strategy Officer at the Chertoff Group. They specialize in this kind of stuff. What do you make of Flame?
I think it demonstrates that malware is becoming more sophisticated. What's interesting is this is about 400 times the size of the Stuxnet virus.
You mean the actual virus itself, the code? It's 20 megabytes. It's huge.
It's huge. And that's also what makes people question who may have developed it. Because something of that size is, frankly, pretty easy to discover. And that's why after they were called in, Kaspersky Labs, to investigate this, they were able to ascertain that there was a piece of malware on the system.
Yeah, we're actually looking at some of the code itself, and it's not an exe file. It's not an executable file that someone could sort of click on by accident and run in your computer. It's a little more complex than that, too. And it uses a scripting language called Lua, L-U-A, that I'd never heard of before.
Yeah, it's a commonly used language, but it's not usually used in malware, which makes it unique. But one thing that you should be concerned about is this was almost as if it was an app for security. And what I mean by that is whoever developed the malware is able to still control the malware and able to develop new techniques to continue to discover information on a computer while they are, discovering other pieces of information.
For example, it can turn the microphone on in your computer, record the information from afar, and send it to whoever the listener is.
And what that also suggests is it's gathering an enormous amount of information, and therefore it requires some sort of data analytics engine on the back end to actually do analysis. Because oftentimes an attack is very targeted, so what you're able to do is then you could go through that information. But if we're gathering an enormous amount of information, it's impossible for any one person to actually go through that, and you need a system to help you examine and analyze the intelligence that you've uncovered.
I mean, it sounds like the NSA. The National Security Agency does this kind of thing. We know they've done this kind of thing with phones, which is legally and for a brief period of time illegally gather tons of information, put petabytes of data through analysis. And do we think it's a government agency like that?
We do think it's likely to be a nation state. We're unsure of who, because many people have motivations, particularly in that geography, the Middle East and North Africa. And the other thing that makes this interesting is that it was large. And I keep harping on that because, it makes it readily easy to discover. And if you are a very sophisticated intelligence agency, you may not want to be discovered.
Well, let's look at that map. I had a map put together of where this software, I'm not going to call it an attack because I want to get to that, that's another point, but this is where it happened, right? These are the countries in which the infestation of the Flame virus happened. Now take a look at another chart here of the percentages or the number of attacks in those places, and you can see the concentration. You can see, Iran and Israel, Palestine, that's where most of the computers affected were. Sudan as well, very interesting, because those are places, of course, among other things, a lot of terrorist groups in and around those areas. But interesting in that this is a gathering. Jeffrey Carr is this interesting writer online. He talks about, this isn't an attack. Let's not overhype this thing. This is a massive fishing expedition, but it's very different than an attack.
I think you have it right, and so does Jeff. It's cyber espionage. It's not an attack. It's intelligence gathering. It has gone on as long as there have been nation states. People have tried to gather information on somebody else. What is unique now is we have a new method, particularly the spread of various IP-enabled devices, your phone, a computer, other devices that they can gather information on, and therefore more people are engaged in some sort of espionage activity.
It's also intriguing because it's those countries. In what way can these things target those countries and not spread in the way that network traffic spreads all over?
Yeah, that's a unique characteristic of how it was designed. It was designed not to spread, automatically. It's actually still controlled by the end agent on where they want that piece of malware deployed and therefore inserted into a system. So oftentimes, particularly viruses that we may have seen in the past, they automatically spread as soon as machines start to connect. And that's also what happens on a basic credit card fraud. You know, once you click on a link or others click on the link, you gain access to the system, and then you're able to gather information. This, on the other hand, does not spread automatically.
Intriguing, the technology of commerce and the technology of government overlapping here. Really interesting stuff. Brian White of the Chertoff Group, thanks for joining us.